Hi guys, Chef Rich here, and this is a Rich Dimension video. Now in 2021, August of 2021, I sat down with Mr. Dwyer Astaphan and Mr. Sam Condor because I really wanted to learn more about not just Bradshaw but also what life was like back in his days and what the labor union and all that stuff did to improve the lives of Kittitians and to give me certain rights and privileges that I have today as a black Kittitian. So we did this interview that's over 5 years ago now, and I never put it out, and because the device I did it on has some issues, but then I got it repaired and I found this amazing interview. It gives so much information. So if you are the type of person who would like to find out about the past, and even if you're not typically that type of person, I would encourage you to watch it. It's a long interview, but it is so worth it. And I remember at the time when we did that interview, Statics, shout out to Hyper Statics, he was there with us at Dwyer's office when we did this interview, and I thought he would have been bored. And when we came out, the first thing he did, he stopped me, he held me by my shoulders, and he was like, mind blown. Because it's one thing to live this life and complain and talk about all the things that are wrong, but then when you learn about the history of your ancestors, of your people, and you realize that simple things like voting, voting is so transactional now in St. Kitts, where you're gonna give me da 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 da, and our party politics, it's so competitive. But when you learn that we couldn't vote, the only people who could have voted was the planter class, the people who were rich. The average Kittitians, they had no money, they have no land, and if you didn't have wealth or property, you could not vote, which means whatever the rich decided in that country, you just had to live by it. And I don't think we get when we say what the planter class really was. These were the descendants of the people who enslaved our ancestors. These were the colonizers, predominantly, well, they were white, British, European people. And so by the time Bradshaw and them came around, they were still ruling, they were still in control of all the wealth and everything on the island. And our people had to really fight. And just like how the States has Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Jamaica has the Garvey and the Maroons, I really wanted to find out, well, who was fighting for us? Because our fight is muddled and tarnished by politics a lot in St. Kitts, and so you don't get the real accurate information and the vision of what really took place. I wanted to do this interview so that we could see these were real people with real struggles, and how their determination and their sacrifice really paved the way for a lot of the privileges and the rights and the things we have today that we take for granted, right? So yes, I had to put back up this interview, and I supplemented it with some slides. So if you're going through it and you see something pop up on the screen, you can just pause and you can read it, because it's a lot of information. It took me a really long time to get all of this together, but I didn't just want us to be there talking, because I know there's certain terms like Providence Fund and the Union and what's the difference, and some of the protests they had, the Buckley's riot, the grinning protests, and all these things. I wanted to really explain what they were with the facts, with the dates, and everything, so that we could really understand it, because we gotta understand where we're coming from if we're going to know where we're going. So please look at this interview, even if you have to watch it in parts. Don't just say, oh, long and you're gone. I promise you will learn so much. Your mind will be blown. Trust me.
My name is Dwyer Astaphan. I'm an old man. I've been around for quite a bit. Happy to be alive. Happy to be here with Siobhan.
Sam Condor, former Minister of Government, former parliamentarian, but also sportsman, football of the national team. That's my favorite sport. And I'm at that man.
why I really wanted to meet up and have the discussion is because I personally, as a young person, feel that I know more about Malcolm X and Garvey and Martin Luther King, and I should know a lot about them, but I also feel as if I kind of cheated in a way, like I don't know enough about our civil rights movement. I don't think people think we had one, but the right to vote and several other ways did not just come from for all peoples at the same time. So I just really want to speak to persons who could give us more information on not just what happened, but the why it happened, and to really give us a sense of what was going on, because this is our history. Unfortunately, many of us are not taught our history. We talk about Columbus still and all that stuff, but we're not taught about that era, that period that gave us a lot of the opportunities and the rights that we do have now. We are going to have a little discussion on Mr. Llewellyn Bradshaw. A lot of people would have heard about Bradshaw, but he's sort of like he's almost dehumanized in a way. He's just a face. Somebody who lived when. They kind of know he does stuff for St. Kitts, but they're really too sure. And then because he is the founder, one of the founders, of the Labour Party.
But he's not a founding member of the Labour Party.
You see what I mean? But when you think of like the Labour and the early stage, most people would think.
Actually.
Yeah, so I think we need to clear up a lot of this stuff and understand that even though it's closely intertwined with the Labour Party, that it is still all petitions history, and understand the reasons even why it's so much intertwined with the parties.
When you talk about the Labour Party, people talk about Bradshaw, but down in Sandy Point, Thomas
Manchester, yeah, we do talk about Manchester a lot in Sandy Point. We have the
Nathan, Sebastian, and those guys, those before Bradshaw. In fact, Bradshaw took over from Sebastian.
And this Sebastian would not be the former governor general.
No, his father. Yeah. J. Matthew Sebastian. Yeah. Okay. In fact, I think I could still find that book where his daughter, Ellie Sebastian, she's a teacher here on the dog loves the J. Matthew Sebastian, who would meet my father, and that has a lot of history of the Labour movement.
Well, I need to get that book. Yeah. Meet my father. Note to self.
Yeah, so that's the Bradshaw took over from, I think, Sebastian 1944 as the president of the union. But like I say, you had people like Thomas Manchester, J. Matthew Sebastian, and so on. Yeah, that's really for but you would know about Bradshaw, because Bradshaw is the guy who really led most of the protest movements, for example, like when you're talking about the challenge to the colonials in the late 40s and so on, when we get to see, after the popular uprising. And so on. And I must say that the popular uprising wasn't started by any movement. It wasn't led by any organization, any leaders. People were spontaneous uprising. But the Labour Party was known as the Workers' League, which was formed in 1932. Before he became the 660 Party. So
the Workers' League, and that was like a union for...
Well, okay, good. That's a very good question, because in those days, in 1935 and so on, 1932, you couldn't form a union, it was illegal.
Wow.
Yeah, the union, you were only able to form a union in 1940 after the workers' right.
Oh.
In fact, if the people were able to have union in those days, you might have had that, because you would have more negotiations and consultation and so on. But because they didn't have that, it was illegal to have union. People had to take this thing upon themselves.
So what did governance look like before that, like in the 30s? Was it just the Governor General and...
Not Governor General, it was Governor, because...
Administrator.
Administrator.
Okay. And were they local person?
No. In fact, two of the protest marches that Bradshaw led was precisely to challenge that, because you were getting administrators that were just sent out
from England
to the colonies and so on, and Bradshaw thought that was they should have some consultation with the people who were going to do that. And when they did that, there are two administrators which he had protested against. One was Blackburn and one was Greenwich. In fact, people speak still of the candlelight demonstration where people lit the candles and walk. I think it was from I don't know if it's Warner Park or what the other street, the candles lit, and at the sound of Bradshaw voice, everything just went off. They was talking about burnout, grinning. That is what that gives.
So when he took front and center and spoke, they're saying that everything just went dark. That was the power that his presence had.
Yeah, that kind of command and respect.
So that's interesting to me, learning about like the candlelight, what we call it, a match.
Yeah.
Because we hear about the Buckley's uprising. And for a lot of us, we would think that would have been the first in, modern enough times.
Yes, but was before the...
Okay. But we don't hear it, and this is the first time I'm hearing about that one, and that was in protest of Greenwich.
Greening. Greening.
Oh, Greening.
Yeah, those good.
Would you say that Bradshaw was sort of unwilling hero of the people? Meaning, some persons, they come up and political gain, that's their career path, but then some are thrown into it because they have to, because the position they're born into, they have to fight for the rights. Which one you would say Bradshaw kind of fit into? Like, he was thrown into it, or he was more just looking for political gain or mileage?
Well, Bradshaw was his exposure through his mother's working at the manager's house, and his exposure at the field and ground level showed him also the disdain which the planter class had for the ordinary people. And that is something that disturbed and stirred him deeply. He was a committed trade unionist. He figured that was the best way at the time to help the workers and to mobilize them. And just for the record, the 1935 Buckley's uprising was not only triggered by the workers, but some of the leaders, most of the leaders of the Workers' League were not sufficiently supportive of the workers. They wanted the people to go back to work. And it revolved around a couple of estates in West Varsity here. And some of the people who motivated the workers on the ground were Kittitians and Nevisians who would have gone to Santo Domingo and Cuba to cut cane. And the environments down there were more militant. So when they came back to St. Kitts, and they brought this militancy with them, and they certainly played a role in rallying the people to stand up. But there were protests before. You had the Portuguese riots in the late 19th century, in the 1890s, and you had, over time, you had moments in history punctuated with protest by the people. The people could not, by any stretch of the imagination, have been regarded as sitting down and taking the knockabout. That is not true. But when a man like Bradshaw, who was a great organizer, a great motivator, one of the greatest orators that I've heard in my 73 years, anywhere in the world, so I'm going to tell you the same thing. When Bradshaw spoke, made an impact, he was offered a scholarship to go and study law in England. In fact, by my mother's father, my grandfather. And he respectfully declined and said, no, I'm going to do this. And it's through the trade unionism, which became legal in 1940. That is after the Buckley's uprising in 1935. It created a big stir in England and in the region because it spread. And the British were very embarrassed about it. And they sent a man down here to have a commission of inquiry in the Caribbean. In fact, he came from the Guinness family. You know, Guinness, what people drink. He was part of the Guinness family. Lord Moyne, and he found the report was so scathing to the British government. The health conditions, the work conditions, the human conditions, the lack of compassion and so forth. It was so damning to the British government that, and this was done in the late 1930s. By the time they were ready with the report, World War II had begun. But they were so afraid if they released the report, it would have such a negative propaganda effect on the British during World War II. The Germans would capitalize on it. That they kept that report quiet until the end of the war, 1945, which is when they released it. But in the meantime, changes began to take place. And Bradshaw, as a young activist, played a significant role in that. It is important to note also, Siobhan, that these guys were Garveyites. Nathan, Solomon, Wilkes, Charles Halbert, these guys were Garveyites. And Marcus Garvey played a great role, not only in helping leadership rise in the Caribbean, in the common cause, social and political activism, but throughout Africa as well.
Yes.
Okay? Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, Patrice Lumumba, all of these people were affected positively by Garvey. So, King Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya. So, Bradshaw was one of that group and was very at home in that kind of company and was extremely effective. The British couldn't handle him because he could speak as eloquently as they did. And I don't know if you ever heard Bradshaw talk slang or something. You ever, no. I know you heard him talk slang. I know you ever said, "Boy, I'm going to do what I come up." I know him talk like that. He could, but he also had a hell of a sense of humor. He liked, and there's certain people who provided him with humor. For example, my brother Tommy, this is just an aside. They used to sit down and break me there. Bradshaw used to come across him and Tommy just like a lot of joke, Bradshaw laugh and he gone, cool him off and he gone. Certainly, I would have to say Mr. Bradshaw. And his vision, he had tremendous compassion for this small man, but he could mix it with kings. And when I was studying in England, I would find out Bradshaw is in England by reading the newspapers. Now, the leader of a little country like this does not make the Guardian and the Telegraph. He knows he lived in England. Bradshaw used to make the big papers in London when he is in town. That time, Manley, whoever it was, or Buster Mantia, who was from Jamaica, but Bradshaw was just this guy. I mean, just thinking about him giving me goose flesh.
Because the leaders at those times, like Adams,
from Barbados, right?
Barbados. Those studied in England at Oxford, and so they were well known. Eric Williams, you name it. But Bradshaw still commanded that kind of respect and admiration by the British. You know.
By everybody. By everybody.
In fact, I think I told the story already about when I was trying to get into the Parliament the House of Commons in England. But you had to have an invitation. You kind of go in like that. And I didn't have an invitation. And they were trying to get an invitation from one of the senior members of the British Labour Party and parliamentarian, Barbara Cartland.
Barbara Cartland.
And she was saying,
Barbara Castle.
Castle, yeah, that's what yeah. And she said, I don't know if I could find you an invitation, but let me try. She said, by the way, where are you from? I said, I'm from St. Kitts-Nevis. And I'm really was at that time. And she said, well, if you're from St. Kitts and you've been to the parliament in St. Kitts and you've ever heard Bradshaw, you don't need to go in there. You've heard it from the best and you've heard it.
And this was a British woman.
A senior
parliamentarian in England.
Yeah.
And she had been a minister in one of the cabinets.
Several cabinets.
Yeah. No. This guy wasn't easy.
Yeah. And
this guy wasn't easy.
I mean, the people around us, well, we had a lot of people from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and so on. And they were really surprised that, she could be talking about somebody. I mean, they have never heard of St. Kitts. They have never heard before they met me. And this was a senior member of the British Labour Party in Parliament, speaking about Bradshaw in that regard.
And Bradshaw had vision. Bradshaw helped people at an individual level. I am one, Sam is one, and there are lots. I have never met a leader in the Caribbean whose vision went so far into the future. I remember in 1962. No, in 1960, I was 12 years old. Mr. Bradshaw used to give me gifts on his return from his trips. I showed you a bag here that he gave.
Yeah.
But mostly books. And in 1960, he gave me a book, English and Spanish. And he told me, Dwyer, learn Spanish because in your lifetime, Spanish will be widely spoken in the Caribbean, among Caribbean people. I never opened the book. 35 years later, Dr. Douglas and I, as members of the new government, are in Trinidad at a conference launching the Association of Caribbean States. So in the room, I am on this side, long table go down, long table go up. Across the table, Fidel Castro, talking in Spanish. And I pick up the headphones and I have to get the interpretation, the translation, and at that moment I said, you see what a fool you are? Bradshaw told you 35 years ago to learn Spanish. And it is in these real things. Bradshaw saw it happening. He also was very close to Haiti. Very, very, very. This man was a cultural. And one of the sad things about it, his house was ransacked and pillaged. People went and took a lot of things. After his daughter, Isis, passed, the house was not properly safeguarded, and a lot of his artwork and stuff.
He had a lot of stuff out of Haiti and out of Africa as well.
Africa, yeah. But he's the first person around here who I was told had traced his roots. He traced his roots to the Ashanti tribe in Ghana, in West Africa. And he used to say it, this guy was just... And the platform for the modern economy of St. Kitts-Nevis was laid by Bradshaw and his team. He had a very able team, Southwell, Ryan, St. John Payne, and these guys. We know them. Well, not easy. These are highly bright, highly capable, and highly committed fellas. I mean, if you look at the situation in health, or education, or the infrastructure,
social security.
Social security, which is a template that was followed in the region. In fact, the People's Action Movement was dead against it. They don't let them take all your money, don't give them your all money. Everybody knows.
And what is very important in that is that the forerunner, precursor to the Social Security Provident Fund. I mean, Bradshaw had a clear plan and strategy for that. In fact, he our social security was that strong because it had, the financial foundation was built. Before that, it just didn't go into social security like that. Right. And the foundation that was laid in terms of the National Provident Fund was something that was supposed to continue. The fact that the People's Action Movement in African government gave back the Provident Fund. That was not how it was supposed to be. I mean, you just heard about the stimulus package that was provided by Social Security. That is some money that was left over from Social Security now.
From Provident Fund.
From Provident Fund. That was,
What money? That was $1,000.
That's some
million, 35 million.
35 million. And but the whole purpose of that fund, once it went into Social Security, that fund was supposed to remain in people's name, and you were supposed to be able to access that to finance your mortgage, finance your children's education, finance establishing business and so on. So that money was supposed to stay in people's account for people to access, and all these difficulties and challenges that you're facing now would not have happened if that fund was used as it was intended to be used. That was supposed to be a financial basis of ordinary folks. And Bradshaw saw this, the need for the Provident Fund and the Social Security, because of what he saw. People, the sugar industry was the main employer of the ordinary folks, and after they left the sugar industry in the old age, they were on welfare, nothing. And people, you had a lot of beggars around the town and so on, people living on
very tough
charity and handouts and so on. But that was the vision for the Provident Fund and Social Security.
Under his
was to transform that.
We also diversified the economy under his leadership. The hotel over
Fort Thomas.
Fort Thomas had the Holiday Inn, you had Fairview Inn, you had Ocean Terrace Inn, you had Banana Bay, you had Cockleshell Bay, you had the one at Viet Bay. Okay? The industrial sites were set up. You had Frigate Bay, which the government nationalized, built the Royal St. Kitts, built the golf course. Labour government, Bradshaw. The industrial sites in Sandy Point and Bird Rock and Pond Pasture. The international airport, the international seaport, the comprehensive system of education, the best clinic system of any small country in the region. Okay? The education system, as I said, Sandy Point High is the first high school outside of the main city of any country in CARICOM.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
No. I tell you,
and we could go on and on and on. We could go on and on and on and on and on. The Son Clearance Act, and of course the acquisition of the lands in 1975, which was the crowning experience for that era of the development of the people of the country. He actually empowered people, and it reached a point where the machinery of development that he put in place, both for economic and human development, because coming from a socialist organization, the human element was always important. The foundation they laid for many people was so good that a lot of those people turned away from the labor movement because they felt they'd arrived and they didn't need that anymore. So they became bougie, as we say.
Yeah. That happens in every grassroots movement. That's something that does happen. And it's human nature. A lot of people do not make peace with the fact that they came from humble beginnings, so that when they do get a little higher in life, to look back at where you came from, as we would say, with a shit pit. Nobody know that. So people, that's just a part of the human psyche and our ego. So they try to erase all of that, and then the very thing that would have helped them to come up to get over that is what they hide then, because then it reminds them of where they came from. Not everybody, but some people do suffer.
But it is an important part of the life experience.
Yes.
Just as it is important, you see what you're doing with 2 older guys here, you're getting something from an older generation to a younger one. You all are bright people. The 3 of you here are bright people. but we're telling you things you didn't know. When we were small, we didn't have to go shopping for this. The TV and all of these smart devices that tend to dehumanize us were not present in our lives. And sitting with old people. If you go to the park after football or cricket, you sit with some of those old guys and they tell you stories of their days and so forth. It enriched you and it gave you information on the past to give you a generational perspective and a connect, which is important for you to go forward with your kid and your grandkids. And that has been broken. And the labor movement, especially the labor union, was a critically important. I tell Sam all the time, I wouldn't say it's totally collapsed, but the demise of the labor union had a lot to do with the demise of the value systems of the people of this country and the confidence of workers and the position of workers insofar as bargaining for their rights and their position in the economy is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt that the conditions of work now is a result of the demise of the union.
Yeah.
In fact, before 1980, before the change of government in 1980, the union were able to negotiate serious benefits for workers. And like the Labour Party and the union used to say, it is easier to negotiate than to legislate. You can't legislate for every eventuality, but you can almost negotiate for every eventuality. And I think that is where the workers of this country are suffering today. Because in 1980, because of the People's Action Movement and the NRP government, they kind of sort of outlaw the agency shop, which was a way of the union, getting its finances. And so the union sort of went on the demise and so on. And so the workers started to get a lot of difficulties in terms of losing their jobs and so on without any compensation. And that is when the present Protection of Employment Act was introduced. It is a result of the challenges that the workers were facing, that the government said that people wanted some assistance, and they created the Protection of Employment Act, but that was it was never adequate to deal with the challenges, and that is the situation we are facing now. The demise of the union.
Well, what's interesting to me is that as a society, right, I like to think of countries and societies as sort of like individuals, right? But on a larger scale, in that it mirrors what's going on in the individual, right? So when you have a lot of persons who go like, well, I come from that, may want to see that I'm here now, I'm better, this is time to move forward. You also have that playing itself out in societies as well, where over the time, a lot of people in society feel, well, we passed that now. We want to go back there, we want to talk about that. We better off. That was in the past. Let's deal with this. But then again, if you're not aware of the reason why certain things were, of the cause of your history, then you're bound to repeat it. So then what you found happening now is that by the time, like my mom would tell me when she was younger, growing up, like in her teens and coming up in her 20s, they went over and, when the PAM movement came, People's Action Movement, it wasn't even so much that white people were here all of a sudden getting that this was locals, but to the younger people who felt that, it was these old ways and, you're boring, and the young people felt like this is something new and hip, and she said she would just go to the meetings because it was like young people, it's young guys, it's something new, and that happens from generation to generation. But I think that, again, like you said, we need to still keep this connection between the generations coming and those that went, because if you don't know, you're going to be going blind. So in all the excitement and feeling as if they're better now and we're going to go forward and there's a new way, back up with the same kind of problems and not realizing that they actually disenfranchising themselves.
Something in particular was able to do, it was to keep a connection. I mean, when you have young labor and you're having gathering, a social gathering, like a Christmas party and so on, Bradshaw would be a president. And Bradshaw paid particular attention as to what was happening to individuals, to persons, what's happening to you.
So what happened, okay, like in the States, I'm not an American, so when I look at it, I can only assume from the outside. But when you hear about like Thomas Edison and Washington and all these people, yes, you know what parties, some people may not even know what party, whether Republican or Democrat they represented, because they were elevated to a point where they were American, These are our founding fathers, our leaders, is the people that shape our society. Whichever side they were on only becomes important down the line when certain people are having discussions. But for the average American, these are our heroes. So why do you feel that people like Bradshaw and all these people, Manchester and these people that spoke about, like you just said, he would be at the Labour parties and stuff. Or why is it that it seems difficult to get him to translate over into not just being seen as a Labour leader, but as a national? Because we have national heroes there. But national heroes, they're like, in St. Kitts, it's like you have sides still. But not they are your hero. And
let me tell you, Siobhan, this is my read of it, I don't know what Sam's is. Bradshaw and Southwell were not polarizing figures. They were opinionated men, very outstanding men, and men of vision. Southwell's youngest son, who is called Shakespeare, his godfather is Billy Herbert's father. Okay? So while people had different political opinions, they still were tolerant of and respectful towards each other. The values tended to break down, and I believe the breakdown of the Union, as I said, was part of that fabric. But I want to tell you a couple of things that Bradshaw has also to be given responsibility for. Not himself, but his team. But he was a leader. Adult suffrage, although it was universal, it had a struggle. And they had no end of struggle with the British. And Bradshaw was not afraid to lead people in marches against the establishment. Okay? The British respected him, but they weren't in love with him. But they respected him. He didn't take crap from anybody. And he knew how to tell you in good ways. Funnily enough, the 1967 attempted coup, because a lot of legislation, some Clearance Act, which introduced CHA and all of these things. I mean, the country was in a mess. And you should get your hand maybe online and check out for the more information. When there was the attempted coup in 1967, but with the voting part first, you couldn't vote unless you were making a certain amount of money. You know who that excluded?
Majority.
But also, the vast majority, 95% at least of the people couldn't vote. So you found that in the election of 1877, in St. Kitts-Nevis, combined 1,500 people voted. About 1,529. Yeah, I have all of those things I could share with you. So the voting became very important, and they had to fight to get that. They had the ministerial system, the cabinet system, and so forth. I want to go on to, and every step of the way, legislative action had to take place. That came from agitation. When they had the attempted coup, now remember, you couldn't vote until 1952 unless you were making an land and so. In 1967, when they had the cases against the attempted coup, the 10th of June, up to that time, anybody couldn't be a juror. You also had to have a certain financial qualification and status in the community.
Same like the voting was transferred to be a juror. And
it is those cases when Bradshaw saw that this thing was a farce and witnesses were being intimidated and whatever, that he withdrew the cases and he changed the law, because the jury system is based upon the principle of you being tried by your peers.
Yes.
Your peer is your equal. So if you are in there, ordinary little Joe or Jane, and I don't believe that anybody's ordinary, I'm just using a term that people use, is being tried by a jury made up of big shots. Them ain't your peers, and they probably don't pick the side, and they probably don't pick the verdict. So the Jury Act was changed after 1967 to make sure that everybody, every man jack in the country,
was voting.
on the voters list, also on the jury list.
So I would like to emphasize here, right?
You're gonna have to cut soon.
That, okay, well, this was, we've actually cut here, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because even now you're hearing the chamber coming out and making certain demands and saying certain things, and people are asking, well, how come people with money have more rights? And again, because we do not know our history, because again of the breakdown in the union and all this stuff, we are back at square one, it almost seems, because what Dwyer was saying is that you could not vote unless you had a certain amount of money. Only the rich people could have voted.
That's
if
right.
you're poor, you stay home, and they make all decisions in the decisions in the country, and you just got to live with it. And this is why learning our history and understanding that Bradshaw and all these people, they were not just some people in a story. These are people who dealt with what we're dealing now on a different scale a bit, but who dealt with it and who had to fight. And because we have lost sight of that and we didn't know about that, we find ourselves having to fight again.
But in addition to that, and you're quite right, in addition to that, I try to look at what's happening in around this country, and I don't see any other country as divided as ours. And where the business sector and there's sort of division between the business sector and the workers. I mean, in other countries, in Antigua, in St. Lucia, the Windward and the Caribbean countries, you have some business people supporters of the Labour Party and some people on the opposition party and the other parties and so on. In St. Kitts, the division between the business people, the plantocracy and so on is division. We don't have, in fact, the only person we had from the business sector and the planter class that supported the Labour Party was Thomas Manchester.
Oh yeah.
In fact,
He became a pauper as a result.
Because he really couldn't understand why, ordinary folks were treated like that.
And he was told by the doyen of the planter class, you turn your back on us and going to them, we will destroy you. In those days, you had Royal Bank and Barclays Bank. Barclays Bank was founded by the Barclays brothers, who had to use all the money they made from slavery in a legitimate business, so they opened a bank.
So they were washing the money in a sense.
Yes. So when the off season for our sugar industry, the banks would bridge finance the estates until the next crop. And what the planters did was influence the banks not to bridge finance Mr. Manchester. And in a few short years, that was the end of him.
I'd like to do a series on him too, because in St. Point we talk a lot about that. They would tell you he would buy materials, he would feed the people around him, and how he was destroyed basically because of
That's
it.
what the man told him, we're going to destroy you. You're out of place.
Okay, before we finish up, just for clarification, and because a lot of us are not too versed in a lot of things, I cannot ignore the elephant in the room. When we speak about us and our struggle, and even Bradshaw is of a certain complexion. Now, Mr. Dwyer Astaphan, for those who would not know, would just assume that you are British, that you are from that line, that you're white. But you said something to me before where you said that you gave me a little bit of a history on where you come from, where your people came from, and why the connection between Bradshaw and your family was so strong, because things are not always as they appear. So if you could just do a quick little synopsis of that, and then we could explore that.
My grandparents came here about 110 years ago from Lebanon. My mother's father was from Palestine.
Okay.
They left when they started moving, the Zionists started to move into that part of the world. Things were already tough for them, and they said, well, we can't continue this, we have to find a new life. So my grandfather My father's parents came first, they were here. They had a couple of kids here. All of them lived in the Liverpool area, Sheer Lane area. Both of my parents were born in Sheer Lane. My mother's father came a couple of years later. He couldn't afford to bring his wife, so she went to the south of France to work as a laborer in the vineyards. When she raised enough money, she came across. He used to go around the island peddling. He couldn't go in the front entrances to the estates. He had to go in the side entrances. When you go around the land selling in those days, it's not like now you could go in a few hours. It would take him days. So he would stay off with people, and all the people he stayed off with were regular black people who were his customers and his friends, and became godfathers of children and that kind of thing. Is in that context, and he became being an underdog himself. He was an underdog, and he reached out to the underdog. So they were very close to the efforts in those days with regard to the Union. I know during the World War I, as I said, most of them live in the Sheer Lane, Liverpool area. They came from a part of the world that was not on the side of England in World War I. So they were looked at suspiciously. And if they wanted to travel from town to Sandy Point or from Bastia to Charlestown, they would have to get a pass from the government. Otherwise, they were not allowed to move around like that in those days. So they were not accepted by the planters, nor did they seek acceptance. They came here to make a life and to work hard. Their customers were 99% poor people, and they never forgot how they made it in this country. And as I said, we've been here for 110 years. They became very close to Mr. Bradshaw, and to them, as I said, my grandfather had offered him a full scholarship out of his pocket to go and study law. So Bradshaw said, no, thank you, but I'm going to do what I'm doing. And so they were very close to the Union, and Mr. Bradshaw married my aunt, and even before that, he was always close to us. He was in our house a lot. Sometimes when I got bigger and he'd be going away, he'd call me and say, look, I'm going away for a week, or stay with your aunt for me. Do this for me, do that for me. My mother used to run a lot of errands for him because they were very close intellectually. And so it was a very close arrangement, not just personally, but institutionally, because as I said, my grandparents were strugglers and they worked hard and they recognized and supported the efforts of the working class, I hate to use those terms, and the Workers' League and later the Union to elevate the small man and woman in the country. So that's the historical connection really between us.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I know you have to go now, but we'll be back in the future because we have a lot to explore. Yeah, so many characters to explore. So I just want to say thank you so much to Dwyer and to Sam, so I call him on their first name, because they don't have to do this, they've served their time in government, they've been through all the ups and downs. Being a Kittitian and in Kittitian politics is difficult, but yet they're finding the time and they understand the need, for this dialogue. And I really hope that we are able to educate and to touch some younger persons, or even older persons who really just didn't have the information. And our goal is ultimately to bring a better understanding of where we come from as a people and to document our history as a people. And hopefully it will help us to make better decisions going forward, so we don't have to keep reliving this thing. So thank you again. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, brother.